Hi, everybody. Lianne here with the three OG coaches today. My other OGs, Sass Petherick and Bridget Boudreau. So we are diving into a topic that I'm kind of really stoked about today. I have actually been thinking about this for a long time, and I've spent time researching it and trying to connect the dots and doing all kinds of things. And I can't say I've arrived at a landing place, but I love the conversation because it gets me thinking. And I can't wait to hear what Sass and Bridget have to say about it. So, what is this big conversation that I'm teasing you about? It is, what is the future of coaching? Or does coaching even have a future? And what are the possibilities there? So we've spent some time in these conversations looking at some of the things that are really slimy, for lack of a better word, really egregious in the field of life coaching in particular. The multi-level marketing kind of paradigm that happens, um, the sales tactics that are really unprofessional and predatory even. And it can feel a little depressing. It can feel a little like, geez, is there anything to redeem here? Is there any redemption? In fact, I often have shared the story of when I had taken up coaching. I'd gone to through the Coaches Training Institute, gotten my training. I was doing it within the school that I was teaching at. I was working with other teachers, loving the whole coaching thing. And I didn't even really know about this whole other space that we've been talking about, this sort of online marketing space and so I got this. There was a another local coach. She lived near me, and she was very big in the coaching world. And she was putting on an event in Vancouver, and she said, "Hey, we had happened to meet up for coffee." And she was very nice. And she said, "Hey, I'm putting on this really cool event. I'm going to give you a ticket to come." And I was like, wow, that's really nice of you, because tickets were something like, I don't know, $500 or something. I was really naive. I was really naive. Most of the people were there on comped tickets because it wasn't about the conference. Now, I'd been to many conferences before, right? I'd been to education conferences where you go and you hear people who are on leading the conversation about education. What's the latest research? What are we doing in education these days? Getting ideas. That was my idea of a conference. This was not that. So I got there super naive, and it was this real, it was a very it was a marketing event where there was some good content. I'm not going to say there was nothing valuable there. There was some good content. Some people spoke from the stage and had interesting things to share. But the large uh, goal of the event was to sell programs, to sell programs to this captive audience. And I really mean captive audience in the sense that they were filming the whole thing. We were not allowed to leave the room, even to go to the wash. Like if somebody was speaking, we were sitting. We were prompted to applaud or give kind of phony feedback. Like the
Jump out
whole,
of your seats. Be
yeah.
excited.
It was so yeah. Now I get that you have to do that for, like, I've been to the filming of a late night talk show as well, and they also do that. But there was something, just kind of like, I felt very like I wasn't expecting it. It was not what I was expecting, and so it took me by surprise. And the last day of this event was the big sell, where the woman who was putting on the event was trying to get people to join up for, and I don't know if this is still the language they use, but back then it was the diamond and the emerald and the platinum
Oh
levels
gosh.
of
Mm.
coaching packages. And there was a woman sitting in front of me, an older woman who had recently retired from her regular job, and she was kind of like still doing trying to do some coaching to make some extra money, but she was ready to tap into her is it called a 401k in the US? Is that what it's
Yeah.
called? Retirement
Hmm.
money. She was
Yep.
ready to tap into her retirement money so that she could pay for this exorbitantly, I thought exorbitantly expensive coaching program that was going to like make her give her the results that, she'd make her money back in no time and blah. And I was just biting my tongue saying, don't, like, in the behind her, she was standing up and they were like putting flower necklaces around her neck. And she's like, come up onto the stage. And I was saying, I wanted to scream, don't do it. Just don't do it. But she did it. And I have no idea what ended up happening with her. But I just thought, I, I've shared in this podcast before that I am very risk averse. But that was just, to me, it was like, you don't take someone's retirement savings. You just don't. Anyway, so that was a big kind of eye opener for me of the sleazy side of coaching. And then I went through a bit of a crisis and I was like, can I even be part of this industry? Can I do this if this is what it's all about? I don't know. And that began the journey that leads us to where we're going to dive in today, which is what is our vision for coaching? What is the future that we can see for coaching beyond all of that nonsense? Is there something more juicy here? So that's where we're going to dive in. And I have tons of thoughts about it, but I wanted to give that little preamble to put it in context a bit. And I have lots of ideas, but I'm going to refrain and I'm going to turn to Sass and Bridget and let them throw some ideas out there before I dive in.
I love
So
this
who
so
wants
much.
to start?
I love this so much. And I love that you invited us to think about this for this topic. There's a couple of things that come up for me when I think about the future of coaching. One is like technology. Like I just think there is a risk potentially that some aspects of coaching become artificially intelligentified. Well, I learned a
Yeah.
word a couple of weeks ago called the shitification of the internet. It's a true thing. Right. And it's when we basically just extract every possible profit from an idea that actually starts off quite good. I think there's a real danger of that with AI, but I also am kind of interested in AI and I'm both excited and concerned about where it could go. But I think there will definitely be something around AI that comes up in coaching. I'm interested in where that goes. I'm also interested in the maturing of the industry generally. Like I can see, particularly from the academic lens, that actually the scope of coaching research is growing. There is a huge body now of really great evidence-led research, and I really hope that continues. And it's taking us into different places now, which is really fun. I'm also really interested in like the assessment of coaching. Like I think we've got these profit-making bodies that are masking as standardizing organizations. And we're in this kind of qualification inflation race at the moment, I think. That's quite interesting to me. But I think more
Wait, I'm
and
going to
more,
interrupt you.
yeah.
Can you just say what you mean by I think I get what you mean by that, but I want you to tell a little bit more about qualification inflation race.
So I'm particularly talking about the ICF here, the International Coaching Federation, who I've had quite a lot to do with over the years. There are like 4 different qualifications you can get with the ICF: an associate coach, professional coach, master coach. And if you're a training organization, you can also get kind of certified or accredited as a trainer. What that has actually involved is a lot of bureaucratic policy following, which does not, in my opinion, actually make for good outcomes. So I've been teaching for the last 5 years evidence-led program around self-belief coaching, and that has been accredited. They never once asked me what the outcomes would be for clients. No one cares about that. There was no interest really in my own kind of coaching philosophy. No one cared about that. It was very
Yes.
kind of, it's that very sort of bureaucratic, fill in the table, do the paperwork, and then pay us a fee so that you can use our badge. I have a really good friend who is an amazingly, she's like an Olympic level listener. When it comes to coaching, I would go to Jack for anything that I wanted to work through. She works as a leadership and executive coach. She's been doing this for nearly 20 years. She's top of her game. And she went through that MCC program to get her master coach certification. And again, it just went through this awful process of follow this very tight process. That's what master coaching is. And she had a bit of an existential crisis going through it because it was like, this is not what I do in a coaching session. You aren't really that interested in what I do. What you want is for me to be like you. And you've decided what that master coach training looks like. So, I've personally experienced and very closely witnessed someone go through a slightly different experience with the ICF, and neither of them fill me with any hope, joy, or confidence that they really know what this work even is. But I think on the other side of that, for us as practitioners, we are kind of in a self-regulated industry. We are, particularly those of us with, quite a high level of integrity, and we want to have ethical practice. We're seeking out ways that we can legitimize our work. And the ICF is probably one of the best known, certainly in the States and Canada. And so we get into this qualification race. I'll get my ACC. Oh, then I'll get my piece, then my MCC. So we kind of get sucked into their world without stopping and going, hang on a freaking minute. What even is this that I'm in?
Mhm.
I don't think any of it leads to better coaching. I certainly don't think that it leads to better outcomes for clients. It really worries me that we kind of have we've engaged in a bit of groupthink, and we've legitimized an organization because there isn't anything else to tell us what good coaching looks like. I don't think we've got the answer yet. It's certainly not going to be found there.
That just that yeah, that's the formulaic thing we kind of talked a little bit about on the last call, right? Where it's like they want to turn you into a monkey rather than letting you be a beetle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
Yeah.
in the organization that I ran, for so long, we did not seek ICF accreditation for that reason, because to do that would have to fundamentally change. And I did the research, like I looked into it, because there were good reasons to do it from a business standpoint, from everything that you've been talking about. There's this certain legitimacy that's conferred. If you go into any kind of corporate coaching, a lot of times that's the first credential that's required. So now it's a pay to play kind of thing. So I looked at it and I thought, we can't do this. We can't become accredited, because it will fundamentally change everything that is positive about this program. Later, I think that calculus changed, but I agree. I've always, the ICF was just able to insert themselves into this process, as we do need some kind of oversight body or oversight bodies. I think there are some educational institutions that are stepping forward, so you can actually enter a coaching certificate program or a coaching master's program, and you can then, be overseen by an accredited university, which I think potentially is a positive thing. I don't know a ton about it, but I think you're right, Sass. I agree. There's this hunger for legitimacy, but not a lot of good sources for that. And then the point, I couldn't agree more about the point of, does this actually impact, there's no question from the ICF about client outcomes and what kind of outcomes are you creating. And maybe you have a different methodology that meets those objectives, but it's very check the box. So that's kind of what we have. And then I wanted to go back, Lianne, to what you were saying about the high pressure seminar, and that is such a common tactic. Tony Robbins is big for that. Get you in the room. He likes the room to be about 64 degrees. So you're freezing, you're in the room, you can't pee, you can't eat, you can't take a break. And it is, and I just want to say for people, because I think it's really important to understand on the meta level what is happening and what is being done, because that is psychological manipulation. And the idea is that you sit there for long enough without a break and you are broken down psychologically. Now, what it looks like is being hyped up. So you're being hyped up, and that's why it's like, get up, dance break, everybody jump, everybody cheer, we're going to walk on fire, we're going to do all this stuff. So you're literally in this elevated state within your body and within your nervous system. And then comes the time where they hold you upside down and shake out all your money. And so I just want to underscore that is a real tactic. And one of the things that I hope people get from this podcast is, oh, that's what's happening. That's what they're doing. When somebody says, another thing that's related to that, when somebody says, you say the natural thing, I want to talk to my spouse, or I want to think about this. And I think we hit on that. But this tactic really comes to play in that kind of seminar format, is then they will start to shame you for wanting to think about, talk about, take a minute. And that's no different than a timeshare presentation or anything else that is just extremely high pressure, because they know once you are buying a car, once you walk out the door, your propensity to buy falls precipitously, and they know that. So the whole thing is designed to not let you walk out the door. So that's what's bad about coaching. And then we don't have a regulatory body. So people are all just out there calling themselves coaches, doing whatever. And some of that, a lot of that is beyond our control, other than not participating in that. So then the question is, what's good?
What's the
Do we do?
alternative?
Yeah, what's the alternative? So I'll kick it back to y'all for that.
Well, I think I want to just draw a little connection between what both of you talked about, because I think what we're doing here, we're kind of, which is appropriate. We're kind of looking, what's the history, and then as we talk about, like, where can it go, what our vision of coaching is. So, from what I understand, the history of coaching really has emerged, especially like the Tony Robbins-ish kind of stuff and the high pressure sales started with, I think it was called EST at the time, and now it's called Landmark Forum. The people who started that were really where a lot of what we see in the teaching of modern day coaching comes from. And that started, from what I've read, the very first EST experience, the very first EST seminar, whatever, was held at, oh shoot, I'm forgetting the name of it right now. You guys will know that place. Esalen. Yes, thank you. Esalen in California. So you have that movement, and then you have coaching moving into the executive world, into the corporate world. And so then ICF kind of is formed as a way to take this thing that started in the new agey hippie kind of world and turn it into something that feels more legitimate. So you have the ICF, and those credentials are really focused on corporate, I would say. The people who want to get those credentials are the people who want to coach in corporate spaces. And corporate spaces often look for those credentials. So it's a loop, right? It's a feedback loop. So that's kind of where I think, you have this high pressure sales thing is the sort of the stuff that stayed outside of the lines. And then the ICF accreditation model came along. The International Coach Federation was formed so that we could feel a little bit more professional. Coaches could feel that they could take this into the corporate realm and it would have more legitimacy than, say, just going to a Tony Robbins event. Although Tony Robbins gets to do lots of corporate events too. That's like, whatever. So there is tons of overlap there. Um, I'm so interested listening to you two because I'm not sure I agree with you that um, we need, what did you call it, Bridget? You called it, we need an overseer, or we need what did you call it?
Oversight. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that we need a single oversight either, but I think we need some guide. So I'm glad you brought that up because but I do think some guiding principles would probably be good.
Well, I think that it's a big umbrella, right now, and there's a lot of people doing a lot. I sort of think of it almost like body work. There's this
Yes.
big umbrella called body work, and underneath that umbrella is physiotherapy, chiropractic, somatics. There's literally, from what I can see, like probably hundreds of modalities of body work.
I think
That's
that's a really great point. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have this big umbrella called coaching, and what is under that umbrella? So, like, I think the three of us have different ideas of what's under that umbrella for our own practice. Like, I think SAS, like SAS is, really rightfully, proud to say her self-belief coaching school is evidence-based. And that's great. And she comes from that's what, that's why I like the three of us together, is because we have these different perspectives. And she's got that academic kind of place where it's like, I want this profession to get more research and I want to have more evidence-based stuff. Whereas I
Well,
pull back.
because it informs
Okay.
practice, right? But so if you ask me why, like, why does that matter to me? I think because the research informs practice, it helps us to see under different circumstances what might result in better outcomes for clients. I'm always going to err on the side of the lived experience of the client rather than like it's not a, so yes, I feel very, I feel attached to the evidence-led
Yeah.
approach only
Yeah.
because I think that is a genuine source of legitimacy. But I
Mhm.
don't think that we should try to give it more credence than it can hold. Like it's not, I don't think any research topic is going to be completely limited and under
Mhm.
certain contexts. So I guess I hold it with some reverence, but also quite lightly.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
felt I needed to make that point.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Of course, because I don't want to put you in a box.
Mm,
I just see
mm,
us, like
yeah.
there is, I think, a distinction
Yeah.
between us and so I sort of think like Bridget with her marketing background too is that,
Mm,
different. So, um, to me, and you can again correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that approach that you're talking about and describing, letting the science inform the work, and I say science, right? I say let
mm,
the research is trying to bring it into a scientific realm. It's trying to take this into a science. And so to me, that's one future
mm,
of that coaching can, like, that's definitely one avenue, is like, what does it look like when you get, I'm skeptical, like, to
mm.
be really frank and
Totally.
honest, I'm really skeptical of any research in the psychology and sociology realms. There's a
Yes.
lot of trouble with a lot of research that's done in
Mm,
those fields.
mm.
Because these are things we're trying to measure, things that are very hard to measure.
Oh,
Very.
and I think that's the thing that you start to see as soon as you start looking at coaching research is the context is everything. It's always limited, but so is all science, right? I
Right.
think I think the idea is having some ontological approach, like how do we know what we know?
Yeah,
I
sure.
think that is a one avenue to find that.
Yeah. And jump in here anytime, Bridget, because Sass
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
love doing this.
Yeah,
We've
this
done this
isn't my thing.
before.
I'm kind of like business and vibes.
yeah.
So I,
This is
you
some
know,
vibes.
So, well, and that, I mean, I think I would, but I think your contribution is really important too, though, Bridget, here, like, like this. So I would say just to put
Mm,
where I'm coming from is where Sass is leaning. I'm not going to say, I'm not going to put you in a box, Sass, but Sass is
yeah.
leaning a little bit more what I would say in the science academic direction. And I'm leaning very, very much in what I would call the humanities direction,
Mm.
seeing life coaching as a humanities endeavor rather than a scientific endeavor.
Yeah, I share that. I think there's a massive Venn diagram where we sit in the middle. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So,
I think it's really interesting because I would say I'm less grounded in a tradition like that and more just about let me just show up and be of service and share my
Mm,
yes.
skills
mm,
and knowledge. And I'm less about, but
Yeah.
um, I think what is really important is some kind of ethical framework to be working from
yeah.
and what doesn't. So I think we're really outlining all the reasons why it's difficult to come to one conclusion and that there's not one
Mm,
conclusion. I think as far as the future of coaching, I think coaching is here to stay
mm.
and it becomes
And why do you think
it's
that though? What makes you think coaching is here to stay?
I think what makes me think coaching is here to stay is because I've always seen it as an approach to life,
Mm,
a way of being. And I think
mm,
I see people doing the best when they integrate. So for instance, when they integrate coaching ideas into their life, right? So um instead of coaches following that coach fluencer model, or even the two models I've talked about are the one-on-one therapy model, which no, those are viable models. We're doing them. Um, but there's so many more ways to show up and
mm.
coach or use coaching skills. And when I see people doing that, that's when I think they're really cooking in
Yeah.
life. So I think this idea of having a thought, I think probably in some ways coaching has always existed and it just didn't have a name or it wasn't
Mm,
a thing. And it's different than therapy because to me, therapy is that, but there's a gray area. There's definitely a Venn diagram between the two, but the therapy is that look back to really heal and
mm.
understand, you know, how you became who you are and to heal the wounds that you picked up along the way. And I do think that coaching can pick up on some of those threads. And so there's a place to be really careful about what you can and can't do, which is also a gray area. And I think because we're humans, it's always a gray area, but maybe it's just helping people understand this is the gray area and this is what you need to be really sensitive to and how to know when you're out of your depth and what somebody's depth is will be different based
Mm.
on their focus, based on their experience and based on that interaction. So it's tricky. I don't think
Yeah.
there's a one size fits all here,
But,
but
but what I hear, yeah, but
yeah.
I want to circle back around to what you said at the beginning there about when I said, tell me why you think coaching's here to stay. And you said, because it's an approach to life. And what I'm hearing the corollary to the unspoken corollary to that is that people find value in it. That
Yeah.
because it provides value, because people feel their lives are richer when they experience coaching, that you feel like it
Mm,
has legs. It's going to
mm.
stay because of that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think what we're going through is a natural maturation of, of an industry, of a practice.
Mhm.
And I want to toss this in, and Sass, I know you want to jump in, but here's an interesting thing too, because as we've been having these conversations, there's been a couple times that I've thought, the funny thing is that I have actually disavowed every coach training. I have done 2 coach training programs, and and not even subtly, I have officially disavowed. I do not subscribe to these coaching practices or the person who teaches the practices. So I don't know. I'm just tossing that into the mix, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
really interesting, right? Because
Mhm, mhm.
um I don't talk about where I learned how to coach, and I don't even really consider what I do now even remotely similar to what I learned back then. So I'm just throwing that into the pot. I don't know what to do with it, but
Well,
felt important to say.
you're a lonesome cowboy out on the range.
I
Woo.
just blaze them. And a lot of people are blazing their own
Yeah,
trails.
absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. And yeah, so I think I agree with you that I think coaching has a future. And I think maybe that's, one of the
Mm.
things I'm hoping people take away from our conversation is we're all, I would say, quite positive about the future of
Mm.
coaching. And so I loved yours there, Bridget, and I'm just gonna share I have been having this kind of more meta view of the whole thing. I'm like, and maybe I'm completely out to lunch on this meta view. I don't know, but here's my theory. My theory is that coaching will actually grow as a profession because of one of the things you said, Bridget. It's always been around, but I think it's actually always been around, but it's been neglected. It's been neglected and it's been gone underground, we could say, for quite some time. And I think it's ready to reemerge in a big way. Could be wrong, but this is my theory. And the reason I think it's ready to reemerge is for a couple of reasons. I think consumerism is running its course. People are tired of spending their money on things, and they are ready to spend their money on things that, like you said, Bridget, that add value to, like true value to their life,
Mm.
not a momentary hit, but they're like looking for places that they can put their financial resources, like this is on a real practical level, put their financial resources that feel like that really enrich their life in a positive way. And so this thing that it reminds me a little bit of like how birth work went from being the midwives of the village and then went underground. We lost the midwives and it went into hospitals and surgery, etc. And there's some really good things that about that, some really good things that came out of the fact that that happened. Like lots of less women die in childbirth now than used to. Let's not, pretend that that's not the truth. But something also went missing. And now that has come back. And so where I live, you have in the hospitals, you have the doctors and the midwives working side by side in the birthing centers. And you're just like, wow, well, that's what it can be like. That's what
Mm.
so coaching as this thing that has gone underground, but is really ready to reemerge. And so so one is that people want to spend their money on life enriching experiences rather than things, consuming things. And then the other big picture thing I think is I've been seeing, and this is where I've kind of decided that calling the coaching that I do, seeing it as part of a humanities kind of sphere, is because I've been reading a lot about romanticism, the romantic movement, which is a very specific movement in history that came about after the or during and after the Industrial Revolution, where people were seeing that with all of the technology, the new industrial technology that was coming out, the humanity was being
Mm.
lost. And I
Mm.
think we're going through a similar thing, and we can see the humanities are dying at universities. They're dying even in high schools. The course that I
Mm.
used to teach that was a humanities course is gone. It's all about the STEM, right? It's all about
Yeah.
science, technology, mathematics. It's all about learn coding and get, the algorithms. And we're living in a very, algorithmic
Mm,
time. And there's
mm,
and people aren't reading novels like they used to. A lot of the stuff that we talk about in coaching, people used to get that through reading a really great like Dostoevsky novel where you would just think about your life and and they're not journaling and writing like they used to. There's no time for reflection. Their lives are packed. So all of these human experiences are disappearing, and but yet people are hungry for them, and they notice, and they're starting to feel that absence. And
mm,
so I think coaching is one of the ways that that gets
mm,
addressed. Okay,
mm.
so that was a bit of my soliloquy there. So I'll just leave that there and let you guys
I think
throw
that's
your
a
two.
well, I think that's just such an interesting like historical frame of reference for romanticism and the Industrial Revolution and how those things developed. And we're probably at the same, a similar kind of loop of history, just much further along the labyrinth, right? Where, yeah, the robots are absolutely in charge right now. They're called algorithms. Like they determine what we see, what we buy, what we think, all of that stuff, is heavily influenced by algorithms.
Yeah.
Um, I really love that idea that the rebellion to that is a return to romanticism and all that is because that was reflective of, right, like beauty and truth and love and loyalty and these things that are very human experiences. Um, and I can absolutely see that there is a reflection of coaching in that because I think at its core, what coaching to me anyway is about is figuring out like who we are
Mm,
in
yeah.
relation to other people and our creativity and the world at large, our communities, our place in that. Um, And I can see, like, from what you were saying, Bridget, about, the value of coaching has kind of always existed. And I can see that there would be, as we're seeing a real democratization of coaching into different spheres and realms, particularly, and manager as coach, is a kind of very common thing in the corporate world now, mainly because they're convinced that that will make people more productive, right? Like, let's not kid ourselves. Um, but also from an education perspective, we start to see, you know, if there's three R's, the fourth R is regulation, and there's this kind of sense of, being able to bring some of the elements of just this broader spectrum of what your experience is into a classroom. I don't know how effective that is, but I think there's something about democratizing these ideas of how do we make sense of who we are in relation to others, in relation to the world. That's kind of at the core of it. And as our world gets more and more complex, we need broader skills to be able to do that.
Well, it's really interesting, circling that all together when you started out talking about AI.
Mm,
And I remember a conversation I had with a brilliant client who's been working on the cutting edge of AI. And she said, what it immediately brings up is, what does it mean to be human?
mm,
Yes.
What does it mean to be human? And so I think that ties in with what we're talking about here. And I think coaching at the heart really gets to that question, who am I? And what does it mean to be human? And I think the other piece of it that where we can be so helpful is in the unlearning of the cultural norms and, our own personal thoughts and behaviors and, whatever it is that we need to let go of, that we need to
mm,
unlearn so
mm,
that we can be more ourselves. And what does it mean to be ourselves? And how do we express that? And how do we have the courage to express that?
mm.
And what does any of that look like? And I do think people are looking for that kind of help. So that's really interesting. I hadn't put it together that way. And you know, it's funny also that you brought up AI, because just before this call, I'm doing some work for myself / for a client where I'm exploring with AI, and I trained it to basically be a business marketing coach for me. So so it is possible, but it's also like, I think there's something in the human interpretation of that. So what I'm finding, and it's laughable, right? Because some things are like, okay, well, these guys are not our overlords yet, let me tell you, because
Mm,
even the basic stuff, but that'll change. But
yeah.
there's a piece in there. There's always this piece that's missing,
Well,
that
yeah,
that needs
science.
us.
There's no empathy.
Well, it's or you know this, and I think I've said this on Sass's podcast one time too. I think it was on your podcast, Sass, but it's like, yes, these things like AI is going to be wonderful for lots of things. For
Mm,
a lot, like, it's going to be great
yeah.
at reading um X-rays and
Yeah.
MRI scans and figuring out where the tumor, like it's going to
All
be
that
fantastic.
STEM stuff. Great.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Science is amazing
Mm,
and it's not sufficient.
mm, mm,
I always say this. Science is amazing, and I do not dismiss it in any way, but it's not sufficient. It's
mm,
not sufficient. The human soul also requires that other piece, the
mm,
soulful piece. And
mm,
so we can't just tend to, and I think this is what coaching is, whatever, whether it's from Sass's point of view of finding out who you are, or, as Bridget says, express, becoming fully yourself, or, these different ways of talking about coaching. It's about something that's more ineffable and yet essential.
mhm.
It's essential. And
Well, and that
uh,
makes me think, Leanne, that I don't really think that regulation is possible. It's such a broad church that I think we
well,
we just need to let go of that idea. But I think there is something about seeing the ineffability of coaching as it is not something that can be measured and processed into a neat box, because
yeah.
that would pin the butterfly to the table. We don't want to do that. We want it to stay in this very broad church and have its own spirit and essence, right?
Mhm.
I certainly do. But I love that there are 100 million different ways into it. There are all
Yes.
these different ways that we can play and access something of it,
Yeah.
and get to a place where we think, oh, that resonates with me. So the people that resonate with me may resonate with this too. Like there is that kind of lovely piece of it.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I think, yeah, but I do think we need to be a bit careful about saying, well, regulation is good. I mean, therapy is regulated up the wazoo, and I don't know if that has improved therapy at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I've been part of a very regulated profession in teaching, and
Mm,
I've seen some terrible teachers over the
yeah,
years.
yeah.
What regulation does is it generally, from what I can see, and I've looked around, I've also was a yoga teacher for many years, and that
Mm,
was interesting to watch how that regulation came up. Or I was kind of, I'm 58, so I'm part of that group of earlier, not the early yoga teachers, but the ones that where it became very popular,
mm,
and then regulation rose up around it, kind of, I would say, and taking Lululemon's rise as a sort of an
yeah.
indicator. Um, and watching that become very regulatory. And all regulation does is guarantee a level of coursework.
Mm,
That's
Mm,
what I've seen.
yeah.
That's it pretends it does more than that often,
mm,
but generally that's all you can expect from
mm,
it. Um, so yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think most people listen to us from our stats. It seems to me
mm.
most people listen to us podcast and aren't watching on YouTube, but and I'm glad, because I don't know if you noticed that, but when you were talking about reading, writing, and in schools, and then you said
Yeah,
regulation,
yeah,
I
yeah.
kind of made a really
I mean, as in
ugly face.
like, I mean, as in
Emotional
yeah,
regulation.
I mean emotional regulation.
I knew that's
Yeah,
what you meant. I knew
yeah,
that's what you meant.
yeah.
And what I was cringing at was the fact that we have even come to use that word to describe our emotional experience, not the
Yes,
idea,
that is so
the
interesting.
word. The
Yes,
word that we have chosen to describe our what the Greeks used to call a temperament, like
yes,
do I have my temper?
yeah,
We have chosen, we're bringing all of this
yeah,
uh mechanical language into, we're
yes.
talking about, like, we say things like humans are hardwired for this and that, and
Oh, yeah.
I always say no, I say let's try this instead. Let's say
Mhm.
it's in our nature to want
Mm,
to be in relationship. Not, let's not say we're hardwired for relationship, because
mm,
that is bringing us into the mechanistic worldview instead of the organic worldview. And we are organisms, and we will always be organisms.
yeah,
And so, and I hear people all the time now, I mean, regulation is such a hot term, right?
yeah,
Dysregulation. Can
yeah.
you,
I love
I know, I'm like,
entomology, and I have never made that connection. That has blown my mind. And now it's like,
yeah.
all yes, the mechanism versus the organism. Ah, that is such a useful distinction for me. Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you
yeah.
for
And
saying that.
All right. So what
well,
I am
yeah.
thinking about here as we're talking is, okay, so I'm listening to this and I'm like, how the hell do I
Yeah.
proceed? You know,
Yeah.
do I
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
what do
Well,
yeah.
I do? Like,
well,
how do
and
I?
I'm thinking, Bridget, not only how do I proceed, but how do I proceed if I have a meta-ish view of not just the coaching industry, then I can't help but also see that we as a species are in a meta crisis right now, right? So it's almost like, how do we proceed not just in this industry, but in this world, right? I think there's something about recognizing that it's above our pay grade to solve all the problems and to fix the industry.
Oh yeah. Don't worry about the
Don't
industry.
worry about
Don't
that.
even worry about it.
Well, I think,
I
okay, so
hope,
that's step one, because I'm always like, how do we bring, I think one of the things that I do in my work is how do we bring something that's more esoteric into
Mhm.
the reality? Like that's what I'm always very interested in. And so step one, don't worry about the industry.
no,
Don't
and
worry about the people that you don't resonate with. Don't go to the seminars where sorry, I've been watching the
yeah.
Democratic National Convention, so I'm ready to take it to church, but
Yeah.
you
Good.
know, my alliteration, but don't worry, don't go to those seminars, don't pay attention to those people, don't do that. So
Yeah.
step one, don't do,
Mm.
the
Yeah.
things that aren't right to do for yourself and for your clients. And
Mhm.
that also may be something that, and if you're not sure about what's right, then I think some mentorship, finding a
Mhm.
trusted mentor, somebody, and
Mhm.
I'm just kind of making some things up based on our
Mhm.
conversation here, but finding
Yeah.
somebody to talk with who's maybe on the same vibe as you. And maybe through this conversation, you've gotten some more ideas about questions you could ask somebody that you wanted to work with to just see if they would actually be a really good mentor for you. Because I
Yeah.
do think that's one thing that can be really good. And I think all of us have gotten a lot
Mm.
from is
Mm.
mentorship.
Mm.
And
And we all provide
so
that, right?
you can get somebody with a similar vibe, but you can also get somebody with a different vibe, because a different vibe can really give you a new perspective and shake up your thinking. And I think investigating codes of ethics for coaches and using that as a jumping off place for your own personal philosophy. And I think getting really clear about what you can and can't do as a practitioner. So
Mm.
there's some good information about that, just to
Mm.
things that you can learn to do no harm. And I think one of the best things that you can do to do no harm is to do your own work and to always be open to feedback from your clients and to check in if something seems to not be going right and to be willing to take corrective action. I'm just talking, I'm really taking it down to like
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
in
And
session, what can we do as we're grappling with all these bigger questions, but what can we do to
yeah.
not mess with
And
somebody's
I'd add
soul?
a couple things to that too.
Yeah.
I would say have faith. And so don't worry about the industry. We're not worried about the industry necessarily. I feel like we're here because we want to enrich the practice.
Mm.
Um, that's my intention always
Yeah.
anyway. So if you are listening to this and you feel and you have been coaching and it feels so like you're in your element when you're doing it, then have faith in that. Have faith in your own practice. And then I would say if you really want to do something, and like Bridget said, don't take all the courses. I think a really, really affordable thing to do is immerse yourself in some really great literature, some really great art. Go read some good books. Go to buy yourself some art books, or go to the library and get some art books, or go to the museum and sit with a large painting that speaks to you. Sit there for like 2 hours and just be with it and see we've talked about this too, about going into nature. So nurture yourself with the humanities and with the organic world. I would say those two things will feed you rich.
I love that. I'm thinking about this a lot, and particularly because I'm rethinking what I think supervision is, and I've realized it's another bloody mechanistic word, and it's why I've always had that kind of equal love repel kind of relationship with it. Because I do believe that if we're holding space for other people, we're often hungry for someone to hold us in that. This is relational work. Our stuff is going to leak into it. It just will. That nothing's gone wrong, but can you seek out someone to help you make sense of that? When you feel like I've missed the mark here, or that didn't quite go as well as I thought it might, or I'm a bit activated by something a client has said, or what tends to happen, that went really well and I've got no idea why, because I was in a flow state, and I can't really, it isn't ineffable. I think having the courage to say, I want to be held as I'm holding others, that for me helps to get us out of this lone wolf hero type cultural story, right? That, we're in a popularity contest in our Western culture a lot of the time. And it's something I just rail against. I'm like, no, we need each other. We need peers, we need supporters, we need mentors, we need our own coaches to help us figure this stuff out. And I think there is a sense I get from a lot of the coaches I work with that somehow it's like either I can ask for business mentorship, right? Because that is like me in a mastermind being successful. When I ask for support for my client work, there's some element of why can't I figure this out on my own stuff that creeps in. And I think recognizing that you want the support that you offer to other people, you want that for yourself too. I think that's just such a gift to give yourself and your future clients and your business, ironically, right? Because when you are fully ripened, then your ability to hold space for yourself and your business and your clients is exponentially greater.
Okay. Wow. Well, we went all over the map today in exploring this idea of the future of coaching, and hope that you found something in there to feed you and feed your soul a bit. That was a long one today, too. I think that might be our longest one. We had a lot to say.
Well,
Well,
and I would be curious to hear what other people think if you want
Mm,
to
yeah.
hit us at the email. I'm not going to say it on the air, but it will be in the show notes because I'm afraid I don't have it committed to memory
Well,
correctly. But
yeah, love to hear your feedback on YouTube, on Instagram, or to the email.
yeah,
totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the great thing if you leave a comment, the one thing I like about leaving a comment in like YouTube or Instagram is then you can maybe get in a conversation with some other people too.
Totally.
And
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks
Thanks,
a lot
Lianne.
for listening. Thanks for your time,
Yeah,
guys. We'll see you next time.
thank
3 empty
you.
coaches signing out.